And that song gears you up, and you know that it's time to have some fun because it's Ring Respect Radio time. We might have taken 1 week off, but that's okay. We're back with you. Not so much in a live aspect, but Papa Spokes, we're going to be recording this one and bringing this in a pre-recorded aspect. That's what we used to do with Ring Respect, so we're getting back to our roots, making a little bit of way on Thursday nights because it's a packed house on Thursdays where we do the MLW coverage for Fusion, and we are followed up by our good friends Astrid and Cody on Making It Impact. So here we are officially on Fridays like we were back on the Video Bros Network as well, but now we're Video Bros Network. We're on Our Local Establishment. Both those channels rocking Ring Respect Radio. I'm Bobby Munson. That's the man with the angelic voice, Papa Smokes. Papa Smokes, let the good people know how you're feeling today.
Well, Munson, thanks for the awesome introduction, and I'm feeling great tonight, and I'm wondering how all my wrestling people are doing out there.
Let us know in the comment section, how are you doing? And by the way, whether you're on YouTube or you're on Twitch, throw us a follow, a like, a sub, whatever you can do to share the love because we appreciate it. And every little bit helps on our local establishment. We are hoping to make affiliate by this weekend. Hopefully we have done that already, and we're going to be able to rock that affiliate mode for you guys so that we can bring you all sorts of great phenomenal content. And we're also trying to boost those subscriptions as well too. So whether you're checking us out on Our Local Establishment on YouTube or on Ring Respect Radio, the Video Bros Network, then just go ahead and do everything you can to spread the word, get it out there because man, those subs are going up like crazy. Pop Spoke, the viewed hours are going up like crazy. This has been the biggest push in the 6 years that you and I have been doing this that I have seen our content get. And needless to say, I am more excited now than I was when I was just kind of a ridiculous, chubby 350-pound guy getting first started into this thing.
You're so hard on yourself, Munson. But no, isn't it a great feeling to be making some progress? And we had some lean years there when we were just first getting going and all that. But now we've got some fans, we've got some supporters and friends that check us out and watch our stuff. And I'm also very thankful for this to anyone who's watching this and enjoying our content. Thanks, peace, and cheers out to you. And come back. We're going to keep going. We're all about the grind, so we're going to have lots more content for you in the future.
Yeah, you bet we will. And a big thank you to all the people who have taken the time to be on shows with us. Some of the creators here on Our Local Establishment who have shared the screen with us, Papa Spokes, but also all the great interviews we've had. I mean, outside of PPW, Cutthroat, Carlton Cali joining us on the first edition of the Bro Show, which was a massive success. But we have had in recent times, Mr. Thomas and Alex Kane, both of the Beaumaye Fight Club. Lance Anawai joined us for a great interview as well, too. I mean, these interviews keep pouring in, and there are more to come, Papa Smokes. I'm constantly digging deep, trying to find them, and we're going to get some names on here. I know that we've been told the boys are going to get our name around there in MLW, and hopefully that's the case. We'll start reaching out to some even bigger names and hopefully be able to bring you the best content on Thursday nights and have a lot of stuff that we could talk about on Fridays. Especially on Fridays, we're gonna kick it a little retro or at least pick a topic that's trending and kind of talk about the history behind that. And that's kind of where we're going with today's episode, Papa Spoke. We saw on Monday, if anybody was online, that somebody I feared the reason that they were trending at this point, because we're not talking about a very young man, but somebody that I've really enjoyed the career of was trending. Good thing it was just to talk about when he was with the WWF in the 90s and some of those kind of things. I'm talking about Bob Backlund. And man, at his age, I really was fearing that I was opening that up and this was going to be a completely different homage here today.
Yeah, it's a thrill to do one of these career talks here when the guy hasn't just died. This is nice. I'm not even sure Bob Backlund could die. He's a tough guy and he stays in such good shape. I mean, obviously everybody does someday, but I could see Backlund making it a long, long time.
Yeah, me too. Can you imagine, like we talked about Judo Gene recently on the program? Can you imagine Judo Gene locking horns with Bob Backlund? I mean, that's just two guys that just don't know how to say I'm done.
Yeah, that's a real clash of the Titans right there too. And I think Backlund might have been a more sportsman-like competitor than Gene LaBelle was. Probably Backlund would go to lock up with him and LaBelle would thumb him in the eye or something.
I imagine that would be the case. But yes, he was He's born in 1949. I was born Robert Louis Backlund. So again, Bob Backlund, his official name, no gimmicks, nothing about that from Mr. Bob Backlund. And I would say even like, despite the fact that a little bit of the entertaining side when it came to the 90s, it was just it was a switch definitely from what he used to be, but still he was ultimately Bob Backlund. He always has been Bob Backlund. There isn't a lot of gimmick to the whole thing. He is just a tough son of a bitch that can stretch you every which way you could possibly think of.
Yeah, that's totally true. And if you're talking about his 90s run, he really he's kind of a wild guy anyways. This is what I hear. I have not met the man, unfortunately, but he's a loud guy, and he insists when kids ask him for autographs, he always has that they makes them do push-ups or exercises or name the presidents and stuff like that. All the presidents in order. You have to earn your stuff with Backlund, and he's a tough guy, and I think they just like kind of amped up his outward bizarre kind of eccentric personality in the 90s. Got him to act the heel part, and I think by this time Backlund had kind of accepted that the business had changed a whole bunch since he was in it. It was changing when he was WWF champion, but I don't think he was open to that change at that time. And then by this time in the 90s, he realized it had changed, and he was just going along with it.
And we will talk more about that 90s run here in a little bit, but we want to kind of get to the heart of how that even came about. I mean, people might know him for that 90s run, or to a lesser extent might know him for his short run as the manager of one Darren Young, as he was trying to make Darren Young great again, although albeit I don't know that Darren Young ever was great in the confines of WWE. I think more it was make Darren Young good for the first time. But I was looking forward to seeing a lot more out of that, definitely, than what we got out of it.
And it didn't really ultimately work anyway, hey? But another funny little run for Backlund.
Yeah, really was. But yeah, let's get to the heart of the matter, and let's start with his training. Trained by Eddie Sharkey, and I know, Papa's folks, you've got a lot you could probably tell, or at least some history that goes behind Eddie Sharkey and the people he trained.
Yeah, I know who he is for sure. He was kind of a smaller time wrestler from Minnesota, which is also where Backlund is from. And he did some time with Vern Gagne in the AWA and all that, but was never really a name performer. But what Eddie Sharkey is best known for is for being going on national TV on the 2020 special, the same one where David Schultz slapped that John Stossel a couple times in the face. That same show, Stossel sits down with Sharkey, and Sharkey outs the business at a time where people weren't doing that at all, including blading himself with a razor blade on the TV show just to show how it's done. You know, he went that far into it, and even shows Stossel how to take some bumps in the ring and everything. So anyway, without getting into that too much, that's what Sharkey is best remembered for now. He was never really much of a wrestler, but he got the wrestlers pretty pissed off by that TV show.
Yeah, he sure did. But let's go back to the focus of one of his greatest students of all time, in Bob Backlund. Making his debut in 1973, and Bob Smokes, he worked for the AWA when he first started out, and I'm sure you can tell a whole schwack of stories with regards to the AWA and definitely Bob Backlund's tenure there.
Yeah, well, this was in Backlund's early days. Talking about Eddie Sharkey, training him, Sharkey would have just been showing him, getting him smart to the pro wrestling business. Backlund, of course, already a celebrated amateur wrestling star in a state full of amateur wrestling stars. So that couldn't have been any easy journey. But yeah, he was a college athlete, decorated and all that stuff. And then he was one of those guys, I'm going to get into the pro wrestling business. So now you have to kind of unlearn some of the wrestling skills that you've been working on all this time, because you can't wrestle like that in a pro match or in a worked match or whatever. So Sharkey would have come in there, teaching him to slow down, teaching him his timing, and all the rest of the nuts and bolts of pro wrestling training. And then Backlund's AWA run, I don't think there really is that much of interest in it at that time. I think this is when he was getting his chops ready, going on the road, doing house shows, doing spot shows, that kind of thing. And yeah, I don't think he ever had any titles or anything like that in AWA. He would have just been kind of a developmental talent at that time. And later branching out, of course, we'll talk about into the NWA and starting to really learn the game there. But yeah, just like a lot of the wrestlers we've talked about on this podcast before, including Danny Hodge and Kurt Angle and even like a Bryan Danielson, guys that were exceptional amateur Greco-Roman wrestlers that came into the pro wrestling biz and found success because they were already skilled grapplers and good athletes.
Yeah, you bet they were. So, but you are right. It wasn't a very long, memorable run that anybody remembers for, because shortly after he worked with the AWA, there was his time that he started meeting up with Tori and Terry Funk and working with the Funks there.
Yeah, and wouldn't that be an education for any wrestler? Because again, the Funks, a lot of people remember them as the Wild Brawlers, especially Terry, but those guys were scientific wrestlers when they first started, just like Dory Funk Sr. had been the same kind of thing. He was a college wrestler, skilled, did the first part of his pro wrestling career as the kind of baby face wrestler that didn't need any tricks, could just out wrestle any opponent, and then kind of turn into like a brass knuckles brawler after a while. Same thing that his boys did. And at the time that we're talking about in the 70s with Backlund, they were probably still more on that scientific wrestling style. So that would have been a match made in heaven right there. They could have taught him all their stuff, and Backlund would have picked it up quickly and easily, probably.
And then, from there, and then he, after working with them, it was about a year later that he went over to another company I know that you used to watch and grew up on, Georgia Championship Wrestling, working with the Briscoes.
Yeah. See, and again, there's that another matchup, the same thing, that Jack and Jerry Briscoe from Florida, and just such intensely excellent amateur wrestlers. Especially Jack, I think, and Jack was another one of those guys that kind of had the Kurt Angle type thing going on. Just, you'll never beat him because you can't out wrestle him, sort of thing. That's his only gimmick. And he was NWA champion for a while too, very respected. Also because he could stretch anybody he got in the ring with too. Nobody screwed around with him. But same thing with Backlund. They probably all had their eyes on him as a promotional tool, as they like to call them, a white meat baby face. Just an all-American boy that is a goody two-shoes, very fit, great at wrestling, and has a positive outlook, and will be popular amongst the children that come to wrestling. Perfect, right? Like, doesn't every wrestling federation want or need a character like that? So
Yeah.
Backlund always had work everywhere he went, and it's not the same nowadays, but in those days, that was one of the real babyface archetypes. Was just, you didn't have to be cool, you didn't have to be good looking or any of that stuff. You could just be a really good wrestler, and the fans would get behind you.
Yeah. And speaking of the fans, a lot of the modern day fans are definitely going to know about his run within the time with the McMahon family. Maybe not so much his initial run, though. Back in 1976, he joined up with Vince McMahon Sr. in what was known as the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, the WWWF, where he ended up going on to become the champion for what I believe is recorded as a 5-year run. Because, again, we talked about this on our tribute to Tonio Inoki, that there was the debacle about the possible loss of that on the New Japan show out in Japan there, and that the WWF, or WWE as they're now known, do not recognize Antonio Inoki ever as having defeated Bob Backlund as the champion. And it seems like Bob Backlund will forever have that run under his belt at the 5-year mark.
Yeah. And that's another thing of life before the internet too, was that if this match was not on a Japanese TV, then only really the people in the arena saw it. And eventually the tapes will come out and stuff, but only the most hardcore fans would be from North America would be ordering tapes from Japan. You know, probably Dave Meltzer, Jim Cornette, and Weasel Dooley would be about the only people ordering those tapes at that time. And so you could do stuff like that. You could make a match that where the championship changed hands and then just pretend it never happened. Used to happen in the territories all the time. Sometimes just in the town 40 miles up the road or whatever, and because nobody would know from one town to the next kind of thing, or very few people anyway. But yeah, as we discussed on the Antonio Inoki episode, I watched that match again just before that podcast, and it strikes me as chaotic at the end. I don't know what you thought of it, but Backlund is looking like he's still ready for a fight, and he's holding the belt like away from the guys in Inoki's corner who are kind of trying to grab it and stuff, and it looks kind of like a tense situation. Maybe it was part of the work. I don't know, but to my experienced eye, it looked like something was going on there, and I'm not sure what though.
Yeah, I mean, I have gone and watched it back a couple of times now, especially after we had that conversation. And again,
Yeah,
it is a very tense moment. And if it is part of the work, I mean, fuck, credit to them for
well
every bit
done.
of it, because
Yeah,
even at this point, I still believe that there was some legitimate tension within that finish.
yeah, there absolutely was, and that's part of a function of the strong style that was getting going there too. I saw a bunch of stuff about Backlund on the Twitter last week when it was trending, or this past week, and there were some clips of matches of some of his. They look like shoot fights, kind of. That it's probably a worked finish at the very least, but you can see a lot of that grappling is. You can see they're fighting against each other, like it's not cooperative in the least. And then there's a picture of Backlund after, I forget his opponent. I want to say Misawa, but anyway, Backlund's in his street clothes at the airport leaving, and his face, like he looks like he's been through a 15-round boxing match. Like his eyes are swollen shut, and there's like raspberries like of skin removed off his face, like taking some hard shots, and the big head kicks in those matches. Absolutely crazy, and it's neat that Backlund, the ultimate competitor, just always seeked out that kind of competition against other good fighters, and he reveled with that stuff. And we'll talk about his WWF Championship run and everything, but when that was done, he went right off to Japan, like to when he quit WWE, just to get some rough and tough, real grappling matches under his belt and get that competitive spirit back.
And if I'm not mistaken, the match you speak of too is the first time that they ever saw the glimpse of maybe the darker side or this psychotic side of Bob Backlund in the form of a promo. I'm not sure if you were able to catch the promo that ensues, where he actually mentions the word that I believe the line, in fact, goes that I am going to murder the soul of my opponent, or murder my opponent, like, along those lines. He
Yeah,
legitimately snaps, and you see that psychotic side of Backlund starting to shine through, even so far as back then.
yeah, and that's some of his Japanese promos. I think that might be where he got that style from, because he would speak slowly and clearly, I guess for the translators or something, but he started just yelling like that, and it's scary. He looks crazy, and that it's so effective too. And I'm sure that's part of what he brought back to his later heel run in WWF.
Yeah, it really does seem that way. I did not know that existed, obviously, as a kid, and we're going to talk about my childhood and watching Bob Backlund. But we'll go back to the WWWF and that run there. So this run lasting 5 years, opponent after opponent, great match after great match. Bob Backlund just killing it over there. But as you said, the tides were turning. Wrestling was starting to change. That was starting to be seen. And that was the time, and I believe you told the story before, Pop Smokes, and I'll let you elaborate a little bit, but Bob Backlund at first was not ready to adapt and change who he was when it came to his run with the WWWF. And that initially was the reason for his departure. And he also wasn't interested in being the guy to drop to Hulk Hogan, which led to the match with the Iron Sheik, where he loses the belt finally to the Iron Sheik, who inevitably drops it to Hulk Hogan, kicking off Hulkamania.
Yeah. And this is still Backlund's title run still being under Vince Sr. That was another big difference in the company at that time too, that might have had some effect on his desire to remain employed there. But yeah, we just briefly we've maybe touched on it in previous episodes, but Vince Sr. ran the New York territory just in accordance with the 5 boroughs there. He always wanted his champion to appeal to one of the large ethnic groups that lived in New York, such as he had Pedro Morales for the Hispanic crowd. He had Bruno Sammartino for the Italians, and a few others of note. And then it started getting too rough at Madison Square Garden, because some of those guys were getting so much heat that now the ethnic groups are fighting each other in the crowd, and it started to get pretty wild there. So I think Vince Sr. wanted to get away from that. Hence, he kind of just took his pure babyface Backlund and made him champion, set up a whole roster of heels for him to fight. But yeah, by the end of this, the company was changing, and with that, the business changing quite a lot. This is in 1982 and 3, I guess, and when Vince Jr. starts taking over the company, now he's got a whole different idea of how to do it. It's not going to be the competitive-looking matches anymore. It's not going to be the different boroughs coming to Madison Square Gardens. It's going to be TV deals. It's going to be cartoons. It's going to be ice cream bars and all that kind of stuff, and mass merchandising and branding. So McMahon Jr. didn't see the future in Backlund. He had already had a decent run, and he was going to be done with him and debut Hulk Hogan, who he had snatched up from Vern Gagne's AWA. And he also had 2 baby faces there, so he wanted to have the interim champion. Backlund had some say in this, and just like a real shooter will do, he didn't want to drop the belt to anybody but someone that would be believable, right? A real, also accomplished amateur wrestler. Make it look good. They also did the injury angle where the Iron Sheik had his exercise clubs and was doing those, and then Backlund came out and he started swinging them around, so the Sheik works over Backlund, hits him in the back with the exercise clubs a couple times. Now Bob's got the taped up midsection coming into the title match. This is a bad look right here. And of course, we know the rest is history. Sheiky Baby puts him in the camel clutch. The towel is thrown in, and the new era of wrestling of WWE and all of wrestling is going to start with the reign of Hulk Hogan 1 week later. But as legend has it, McMahon Jr. in his first meeting with Backlund said, "Yeah, we'll keep you around, but you got to dye your hair black, and I'm turning you heel." And Backlund said, "Yeah, I'm out of here. I didn't build all this up to have this happen. Like, the people know me and they like me, and I'm not doing that." So, like I was mentioning before, he took off to Japan and started doing shoot matches with Misawa and Takada and all these real tough guys in Japan, and just flourishing over there. Had some of his best matches and best footage are from there, because they're not so much pro wrestling matches with storytelling and all that kind of stuff. It's just pretty much guys sparring very violently. Like, Yeah, it's good stuff. That Inoki match is like that a little bit too.
Yeah, almost like it almost borderlines on what the UFC used to be like in a sense when you get two really good grapplers in there, two great fighters that just couldn't one up each other, and they had no time limits back in the day of UFC. So some of these matches of Bob Backlund's, I'm talking, you better sit down and have a good afternoon because they have got some decent length to them, but they look like fights, they feel like fights, and if you like watching two guys throw each other around and beat the living piss out of each other, then Bob Backlund matches, especially the ones out of Japan, are some of the absolute best afternoon watches you can get behind.
For sure. And I mean, also his matches as WWF champion are pretty good too, because he had a nice bunch of heels to work with, including Superstar Graham, Ivan Koloff, Stan Hansen came through, Bruiser Brody came through. He had lots of good, very experienced heels to work with. And I also like his matches with Jesse Ventura, good stuff too. And Vince Senior just kept lining him up, and Backlund knocking him down. And everybody knew when Superstar Graham was champion right before Backlund. They all knew who he feared. He was avoiding Backlund for so long. They kept them apart because they were the diametrically opposite wrestler. Backlund, the hard worker, and the sportsman and the non-cheater and everything, and Graham, the absolute opposite of that, the cheater and the superstar and the shades and everything. The people loved it and couldn't get enough of it. And then after Superstar Graham had almost a year-long reign, that's when Backlund took over, and they kept him in that spot for quite a while.
Yeah, they sure did. And before he eventually made his way back to said WWF after his time away there, he did also have some matches in the NWA territories, and also with the champ Nick Bockwinkel at the time. So get you to elaborate on that. But also the NWA, he had 4 matches against Harley Race for the NWA Heavyweight Championship, and also one against Ric Flair as well too. Never actually defeating any of them in those matches, but again, some very great classics.
Yeah, and it was a different time too when Backlund was champion, because Vince Senior worked with the other promotions. He didn't see them as competition. They worked together and they shared talent, and they shared all kinds of advice and other business matters and stuff like that. They had a harmonious relationship. So at that time, there were some of the dream matches, as people talk about nowadays. Backlund versus Bockwinkel, both titles on the line. I mean, my God, how could you do that, right? They're from different federations. Backlund had did you say it was 4 matches against Race? Was he champion for all of them? Yeah.
As far as the stat I read, I can't confirm, but the stat I read versus the NWA champion Harley Race on 4 occasions, and against NWA champion Ric Flair on a single occasion.
For sure. I remember in the wrestling magazines, I know one of those matches was against Harley Race in Kansas City, and it's an outdoor match and it's raining, and they're both really bloody, but the ring is soaked and everything. There's some famous pictures of that. Got to try and find that, Munson. It looks funny because it's actually raining pretty hard during this match, and they just keep her going.
You almost need to get that match playing with Slayer's Raining Blood in the background playing. Yeah. That would just kick some serious ass, I believe, right there.
For sure.
Now we're going to talk about going back to, well, actually, you know what? Before we talk about the run in the 90s, I also wanted to mention, you mentioned Pedro Morales, and he actually was tag team champion in the WWF briefly with Pedro Morales, and they defeated the Wild Samoans in order to get there.
Yeah, that couldn't have been easy, because the Samoans were the kings of tag team wrestling for a few years while they were there. But again, Backlund and Morales would have been considered quite a dream team at that time, and would have been so popular with the fans. I imagine they were getting some big pops, and they got put over the Samoans. But Afa and Sika also held the belts 10 times or something like that. So no big deal to them.
Yeah, gold seems to always follow any of the members of the Anawai or Fatu family.
Yeah.
But yes, there was gold that they dropped over to Pedro Morales and Bob Backlund. But going now back to the WWF or WWF as it was under Vince Jr., Bob Backlund making a return. And this is definitely when I was into pro wrestling at this point. This was 1992. So I had been a fan for approximately 3-4ish years kind of thing. So I had been in tune with what was going on. And suddenly I'm watching, I believe it was WWF Superstars, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, because 93 was when Raw debuted. So this is predating the Raw ties. It was back when we had Superstars, which aired here. I know Wrestling Challenge was more in the US, if I'm not mistaken, if that's the way it worked.
I'm not sure. When I was like in the late 80s, it used to be WWF Superstars on at 10 in the morning on Saturday or something. That's what I remember.
And that's what we got too. But I know that they also had it branded as WWF Wrestling Challenge in some markets as well too. But I know definitely for us out here in Canada, especially Western Canada, we had it as WWF Superstars. And even in the 90s, yes, it was on a Saturday at about 10 a.m. I remember discovering it because I happened to be sitting there with my brother watching Saturday morning cartoons, and all of a sudden it comes on the TV. Holy shit, these are real guys. These are big guys on screen beating the piss out of each other. Like, I've been watching cartoon characters beat the piss out. These are real men. Holy shit! I got to tune in. And so my brother and I become massive fans. I've told the story a few times before, and then all of a sudden 92 rolls around, and I'm getting really invested in this stuff. Really enjoying the run of Bret Hart. I mean, I got invested in it when he won the title here in Saskatoon. A great joyous moment. All of a sudden, this weird Mad TV like guy standing on screen wearing this goofy suit and a bow tie inside the ring and doing a promo. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And why should I buy that he's dangerous in any way? Like, he's supposed to be a heel. Not so sure I buy him as a heel. And this is when he introduced showing how to lock a chicken wing onto someone, the chicken wing crossface. And as he does it, he's got, I believe it might have been Pellegrini at the time that was the in-ring guy for doing the interviews and stuff like that. So I believe Todd Pellegrini's there, and he's got the microphone, and Bob Backlund's got him holding the microphone to his face still while he's got this poor enhancement talent guy in the chicken wing crossface, and the eyes and the yelling of Bob Backlund, the psychoticness comes through it. Just the evil side of Bobby, bad Bobby when I was a kid, just starts salivating at this opportunity. And it's like, well, son of a bitch, this guy shut me up in a New York minute here. This is somebody I want to pay attention to. And we'll go more into it. But man, I remember it so vividly, Papa's folks, that I knew right then this guy was going to be something special to watch.
Yeah, I got to agree with your sentiments about that too. I know when I watched that segment, again, there's no internet or anything. I didn't know it was going to be happening. You could actually be surprised back then. I couldn't believe that Backlund was back with WWF. I mean, years go by and fences get mended and all that stuff, but I still couldn't believe it. And there he was with his haircut and a heel now too, right? But like we talked about before, he was an old school wrestler. Like, Bob has a foot in old wrestling and a foot in modern wrestling too, and I think it took him a while to come around to how the business had changed, and he got a chance to make another run. And if that's how it was discussed, that you'll get a championship run because Bret doesn't want to drop the belt to anyone else but an actual shooter kind of thing, then yeah, who wouldn't jump at that chance, right?
Yeah, and that's what they did. They had Bob Backlund go straight to the top as the top heel in the company, did it in a beautiful way. And then I know to this date that still one of our top ranked videos here on the channel is one of the early editions of Ring Respect Retro that I was testing out, talking about things that I watched as a kid. And one of the things I talked about is the Survivor Series match, the I Quit match between Bob Backlund and Bret Hart. And this one still is racking up hundreds to thousands of views per month because people are so invested in that time frame in professional wrestling. There's a lot of people that grew up in the era I did watching it, and they really fondly remember this. And that match, not only was this a quality match between two absolute shooters in the ring, two great professionals. I could watch Bret Hart and Bob Backlund fight for hours. These guys were phenomenal. But it wasn't just the investment to what was going on in the ring, but the moment when you saw just how good Owen Hart could be, as when he really wanted to pour it on the outside, really added to this match. When he is pleading with his own mother, like as if he's now broken, he is torn. He can't watch Bret suffer in the ring anymore at this point, and he's crying and doing all this. And you see Martha over there, and her tears are welling up to the point where I don't even know if Martha was in on the whole thing or not, because if she is, kudos to her and her acting ability. But man, definitely kudos to Owen with the way he poured that on. And just that moment, seeing Martha come and take that towel and throw it in and call that match, and Bret losing as a result of that, and Owen screwing Bret in the process. I mean, it was such a insane moment as a fan. I couldn't believe it. I was pissed. Like, I mean, I was a massive Bret Hart fan at the time, and this son of a bitch Backlund come along and beat Bret at the submission game of all things. Like, this did exactly what it was supposed to do. The young fan in me had no clue about these guys otherwise. Like, I didn't know about Backlund's previous career, none of that kind of thing. I just knew this guy was some pissed off old man that came in here and just beat my hero. And I was none the happier for it. I was angry. I wanted instant revenge for Bret Hart.
Yeah, I think most people did. But again, I was watching this for the first time back then, too, as it was happening on TV. Not only was I surprised that Bob Backlund, of all people, was making a comeback in 25 years later in WWE, but my God, he's got a title match, and it's kind of looking like he might win this. And yes, he did indeed win the title. I couldn't believe how it was booked. I had no idea. The same thing. It's life before the internet. I didn't know the whole story of what had happened, because there weren't sources in which to read all this stuff. Didn't know he was coming back. Didn't know there was anything planned. Now all this stuff is out about everything all the time if you actually want to find it. I don't like to spoil my own surprises very much, so I don't seek out this stuff. But at this time, it just came as such a surprise. I said, I can't believe Bob Backlund is champion again, but I like it. And I thought he was doing good work at the time, and so much different than his previous character, as Superstar Graham used to call him, Howdy Doody Bob Backlund, because he looks like the little puppet Howdy Doody. And it was a changing of the guard, and I had no idea what Vince had planned with his whole reign and everything, and I have the feeling it didn't go exactly how he planned it, but there we got it. It was a little treat for the old wrestling fans.
Yeah, and again, it ended up being a transitional championship run, which is very unfortunate, because I think that there was miles to be had in the Bob Backlund heel character. I think that they could have done a lot more with it outside of this Bret feud. I think the Bret feud should have proved enough that you could do more mileage on Bob Backlund as a heel, but instead he ended up being a transitional champion, and at a house show within under 10 seconds, I believe, losing it to Diesel, Kevin Nash getting his first WWF Championship run at that point. And then seemingly Bob Backlund just disappears from WWF altogether. This would be up until the later into the 2010 era, when he came back to the company, had some spots, joined them for a few different things, and then later on, just prior to around 2017, was put into the program as the manager of Darren Young with the segments Let's Make Darren Young Great Again. People can debate whether or not Darren Young was ever great in WWE, but I was okay with the direction that this was supposed to go, because I know Bob Backlund, I know what I could see. If he could have taught Darren Young to be something special, just like him and everything like that, and having some psychotic old man in your corner like that could help to pull the cheating wins and put Darren Young over, if Vince would have known how to still put guys over at that point in time, I think they could have had some mileage out of Bob Backlund, the manager, in fact.
Yeah, and he was kind of running Young's character like a political campaign kind of thing, wasn't he? And he was shouting them out and had the slogans and the stickers and everything. And Backlund's a lunatic, and he's a good talker. And obviously they wanted Young to get some help from Backlund in that manner, and to try and get him over, because they were worried that he wouldn't get himself over, kind of thing. So I thought it was cool, and involving Backlund is just such a weird thing but they like to bring old guys back sometimes in a comical or a bizarre kind of fashion, and just see if it works, kind of. And that's not even the last appearances he did with WWE too. He has. I'm sure you're getting to this, but I was pleased as punch to see his ones after this too, when he's really in his late 60s or something.
Yeah, and it was and that came about, and then seemingly in 2017 left WWE, semi-retired at that point. But that wouldn't be the last we saw of Bob Backlund, the wrestler, mind you. So here's where it starts to get really interesting. He leaves WWE in 2017, and not that long ago, at the age of 68 years old. And we've seen some wrestlers come back recently that are in that age group, and it's been fun to seek this out just yet. But I have a funny feeling that if anybody at 68 years old could still look like they take a good bump, I have a strong belief Bob Backlund is. And in fact, I've seen just prior to that him taking some bumps in training videos, even at the age he was. And he looks absolutely fantastic at that age. If only I could be that good when I'm in my 60s, I'd be very, very blessed. But yes, he did go and work for, I believe they Tradition Pro is where that he ended up going to wrestle there at the age of 68. Definitely protected in some more tag-like environments and stuff like that, of course, being 68 years old. But again, I kind of curious to go and have a look at this, because I do believe that if anybody in that age range could come back and do something, Bob Backlund's definitely one of them.
Yeah, he's a wrestler's wrestler. He'll be a wrestler all his life until he dies, and that's the kind of guy he is. But I was trying to lead up to, I'm not sure what year it was, but I remember watching Raw one night in, must have been 2014 or 15 kind of thing. And they had a little thing going on where it was a wrestler whose first name was Heath. And he had this challenge where he wanted to, oh yeah, I only fight champions or ex-champions. So they were sometimes pissing him off and bringing back old veterans from the past. Do you recall this little bit? Now I know Vader was one, hey, and there were a few other ones. But then all of a sudden, Backlund comes out to the real marching band, the collegiate music kind of, and here comes Backlund, kind of looking confused out there. Man, I popped so hard, and the crowd was equally like just flabbergasted, kind of. Here he is in his singlet and his trunks coming to the ring, not really looking all that different than he ever did. Like, you time marches on, you can tell he's a little bit older, but I mean, he still looks like he's in shape and stuff. Gets in there for the match, and this Heath guy is kind of like, oh my god, and takes a swing at Backlund, and he's in the chicken wing and he's tapping out to it. Like, nice quick match, but my god, I just it made my heart brim over just to think that he can, they approached him to do an appearance, and he said, well, I can do a match to a certain extent if you want.
And I think that might have just barely predated the Darren Young run as the manager. I think because Darren Young ended his tenure with WWE. But yeah, I do very vividly remember that now that you brought it up, and I forgot to write that down. So I'm really glad you brought that up. And I do remember watching that and just thinking, like, good God, I'm like, man, like, he doesn't look like he's missed a beat in terms of like his physique and stuff like that. He looks fantastic for a 60-something-year-old man. Like, I can't discredit the guy and the hard work he has put in to every single day of his life since he's gotten into this business.
And I was also thinking about, speaking of all of his hard work, I was thinking about, I think even prior to the 2010 or something, he was hanging around TNA wrestling for a while there too. Yeah, and I don't think he ever had any matches, but he was often doing the Harvard step test at ringside, stepping up and down off the block or whatever. And he would do it for the entire show. Like, while there's matches going on and everything, Backlund, he ain't stopping. He's just doing it the whole time. Yeah, that was his thing in TNA.
He probably never broke a sweat the entire time. Yeah,
Yeah.
man, he's out of this world, and I'm glad, Papa's folks, that we got to sit here and talk about the career of somebody who is this great, and we did it on an account of just wanting to get together and do this. I know we had mentioned it a few weeks back, and then I
Yeah.
really feared when I saw the trending. I was like, oh shit! Like, just as we say his name, bring up the idea of doing this show, all of a sudden I was fearing that the guy had passed away, and then as soon as I started reading the post, I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, I should have known better. Nothing kills Bob Backlund.
Yeah, he's probably going to outlive both of us.
Yeah, I had imagined so too. And kudos to him and the career that he's had. It's been wonderful talking about him. I think we will close the chapter of the career of Bob Backlund on that note, though, Papa's folks. Before we start telling everybody where we can go and reach out to us on socials or anything like that, first I want to play you guys a quick little video. This is a sneak preview of a little show called Beats and Beatdowns that myself and Carl Carafel created, and we were doing on Turnbuckle Studios and Love Wrestling previously. Season 1 can still be seen definitely over on Turnbuckle Studios YouTube channel, so if you want to catch up on it, we're taking A to Z look at the influence of music in professional wrestling. We got through 8 episodes so far. We got a brand new season that's going to be dropping probably in the next few weeks here for sure, but in the meantime and in between time, we get a little sneak peek for what's coming up on season 2 of Beats and Beatdowns.
Trendsetters, the school of hard knocks and that attitude era. Yeah, I just wanted to be one of the best, holding the mic as I'm yelling out D-Generation X. I will remember it. I never forget it.
And that little video there was made by the man on the show there with me, Carl Carafel. Definitely check him out over at Turnbuckle Studios. He does fantastic work over there, and we are big supporters of Carl, and I know he's big supporters of us here, Papa's folks, so big shout out to him, and looking forward to getting down to some business and talking about some music and wrestling again with my good pal, Carl Carafel there. We'd really enjoy doing Beats and Beatdowns.
I've enjoyed listening to it. I'm all caught up on episodes now from the first season, so looking forward to more.
We got lots in store, and a very special guest going to be joining us for that live season finale as well this season. So we stay tuned to find out who that is closer to that time, but it is going to be a fantastic show. We're also, for the letter Q, just so you guys have a heads up, we couldn't really find an associated artist to go with the letter Q and professional wrestling necessarily. So Carl and I decided it's Q&A night when it comes to the letter Q. So we want you to get in your questions, whether it be questions and comments about professional wrestling, about music, or about performances within professional wrestling. We want to know what you guys know and what you want to know from the two of us. So get your questions into us on social media, in the YouTube channels here, anything like that. We're going to jot them all down, and we're going to get to every single one of those questions on that episode of Beats and Beatdowns. So get that in ASAP. But Papa's folks, that brings us to an end of this episode of Ring Respect Radio, the very first Ring Respect Radio right here on OLE Podcast, our local establishment. It is an honor and a blessing to work with such wonderful people here. Papa's folks, where can all the good people, now that we've got a big basis of fans that came over from all the other contributors here on the channel, where can they reach out to Papa's folks? Where can they find you, follow you, and talk wrestling with you?
Okay, I'm on Elon Musk's freedom platform known as Twitter at smokes_Papa. And I'm also on Twitch at Papa_smokes_.
There you go. Check out Pop Smokes over there. You can check out me at Real Bobby Munson over on Twitter. You can check us out on Instagram at Video Bros SK. You can also check out some of my gaming and other various streams over on my personal Twitch. It's twitch.tv /video_bro_Bobby Munson. You'll also catch me in some of your streams there. Give me a follow over there. I'll make sure to go check out what you got going on as well too. You can also catch me doing the Bravado each and every week, possibly Saturdays, where I'll be talking about all things music, movies, and everything like that. You want to talk a little bit of entertainment with me, that's the time to do so. And on Sundays with my brunch buster brother, Mr. Chris Parrish, the one and only, who, man, this is airing on Friday, probably prior to Chris's big open challenge he's got going on over at Love Wrestling. Chris Parrish is pissed off. He has turned on Bobby Sharp. He went and beat the piss out of Bobby Sharp because he's tired of getting the raw end of the stick over in Love Wrestling, and he snapped. He's not happy. I know the guy personally. I know he's not happy, and I fear for whoever dares to walk through that rampway and try to take on Chris Parrish, because I would not want to be in the boots of the person who's going to stand across the ring from him.
Well, that sounds very interesting. And we also have some connection with the Lion Warrior, Bobby Sharp, too. So do you think he's out for revenge? Maybe Parrish better watch his back.
Don't have to worry about that. Actually, Parrish beat him down so bad that Bobby Sharp is back on the injury list. He is going into emergency surgery. Parrish beat him so far down that Bobby Sharp is on the shelf for the time being. You know that he's going to be wanting revenge on his former best friend, one of his absolute lifelong best friends in this business. I guarantee that animosity is going to carry over, and the more that Bobby has to sit there and watch Parrish's rise, I can imagine his blood is going to be stewing. He's going to be ready, itching to get back in that ring and get that opportunity to go one-on-one with Chris Parrish down the road here.
Well, good stuff, man. We got a couple of plot lines coming up for the future here too then, and I'm always interested in young Parrish's career, and I hope to see Parrish out in Saskatoon area for some wrestling action. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed anyway.
Yeah, so am I, because then we could go party it up with him afterwards, show him a good old Saskatoon Video Bros party night. It'll be a blast. And speaking of out in Saskatoon, if you're out in Saskatoon, tomorrow, Saturday, October 29th, and you're thinking, hey, what should I do? It's Halloween weekend. I know what you should do, because $15 is going to get you through the goddamn doors of the Cosmos Senior Center to watch some Prairie Pro Wrestling live wrestling action. Not only do we have that big main event, the costume battle royal for you, where everybody's going to be dressed up, getting in there and dumping each other over the top ropes for the enjoyment of the fans in Saskatoon. But we've got the big title match. This is the one I'm excited for, Papa Smoke. It's going to be Sheik Akbar Shabazz, the longest reigning Prairie Pro Wrestling champion in history, taking on Cutthroat Colton Kelly. It doesn't get any hotter than that. It is going to be one hell of a night. PPW presents Ring of Horrors.
Yeah, good promo, Munson, and I'm really looking forward to the show. You and I are going to be there in our video bro capacity as part-time security guys, full-time cameramen, and jack of all trades around the show, of course. And I can't wait to see the boys. I can't wait to see all the staff and all our friends that are the fans there too. The place is going to be packed, steamy and hot as it always is, and loud as hell, man. I love our PPW wrestling nights.
Me too. It's going to be a blast. We're looking forward to seeing you guys there. And remember to make sure to tune in Saturday afternoon to the PPW YouTube channel, where you'll be able to see a brand new match Papa Smokes and I were able to call. It is going to be a blast. This weekend is full of fun. So check it out. And thank you for joining us here on Ring Respect Radio, the Video Bros Network, also on our local establishment as well too. It's been a blast. So for myself and Papa Smokes, until next Friday on Ring Respect Radio, take care, enjoy your day, and we'll see you soon.